The first light of morning bled slowly across the high desert, turning the jagged ridges into long shadows that stretched for miles. From her cockpit, Captain Dana Ironhand Vance watched the land wake up in muted gold, the kind of dawn you didn't need to look at twice to know the day was going to be clear. The twin General Electric turbofans behind her purred with that low, reassuring hum she'd carried through hundreds of sorties, a steady heartbeat she trusted more than most people she knew. The A-10 Thunderbolt II was an ugly beast to some, but to Dana, the Warthog was the perfect partner, rugged, unshakable, and willing to take a beating if it meant bringing you home. Her hands moved with deliberate precision over the controls, each scan of the gauges and displays part of a ritual that had been drilled into muscle memory years ago. Oil pressure, hydraulic systems, munitions load, terrain clearance, all checked and rechecked, her mind automatically cataloging any variable that didn't feel right. Down below, a scatter of tan military vehicles crawled along a dirt track. She keyed the radio, her voice low and even. "Iron Hand to Bravo 6, I've got you in visual at grid 2, 7, status?" A crackle of static, then the calm voice of the JTAC came back. "Bravo 6, all green. You're our umbrella, Captain." She acknowledged with a short click of the mic. No need for words. Everyone knew what her job was: keep the wolves away. The A-10's slow, almost lumbering cruise didn't bother her. In a fight, the Warthog wasn't about outrunning the threat, it was about ending it. She'd survived more than one day where speed meant nothing but the ability to get to the next fight in one piece. She was scanning the ridgelines, eyes flicking between shadow pockets and the distant haze of the border, when her radar chimed. Two fast-moving blips had appeared on the edge of her scope, closing in with the kind of speed only high-performance fighters could manage. She toggled to a higher range. F-16 Fighting Falcons, transponders squawking friendly, but their vector screaming otherwise. Before she could hail them, a clipped male voice came over the radio. "Warthog 1, 1-2, divert course and prepare to land immediately." "This is non-negotiable." The tone was wrong, no call sign from them, no acknowledgement of her mission, just a flat order that carried weight like a brick to the sternum. Dana's brow furrowed under her visor. "Say again, Falcon, and clarify authority for that order." Silence for 2 beats, then another voice, colder. "Divert, or we escort you down, your choice." The desert outside seemed to tighten, the open space suddenly feeling like a box. She didn't have AWACS coverage in this sector, no eyes above to vouch for her or challenge their directive. 2 F-16s could climb circles around her and dictate every move if they wanted. Her Warthog could take hits, sure, but not from missiles that never missed. She let out a slow breath, keeping her tone steady. Copy, diverting. Her left hand eased the stick, banking toward the coordinates they'd fed her. The F-16 slid into flanking positions, one high and off her right wing, the other trailing just far enough to keep her boxed in. She could see the lead jet's canopy glinting in the sun, the faint silhouette of the pilot's helmet turning toward her. It wasn't the look of someone escorting a wayward ally. It was the look of someone watching a target, and that told her more than their words ever could. The descent felt wrong from the moment she rolled into it. The F-16s held formation so tight, she could see the sunlight glint off their wing pylons, close enough that she could make out the micro-movements of their control surfaces. This wasn't the professional, loose escort spacing that left room for maneuver, this was predator close, the kind of proximity that made accidents happen fast and on purpose. Dana kept her face still, eyes flicking from one falcon to the other, every muscle in her forearms loose but ready. Her mind was running parallel tracks, one calculating fuel reserves and wind shear for the landing, the other running through the possibilities. Mistaken identity? Unlikely they'd had her tail number since the first hail. Rogue orders? More possible. Something darker? She didn't rule it out. The landscape below flattened into baked earth and scattered sagebrush, the horizon broken only by a few jagged ridges. Then she saw it, the airstrip they'd been herding her toward. It wasn't much more than a single worn stretch of patched asphalt, with faded paint lines and heat mirage crawling over its surface. A squat hangar leaned against the desert wind at one end, its corrugated sides sun-bleached and warped. There was no control tower, no visible comms antenna, no parked military transports. Too isolated for any standard diversion point. Warthog 112, cut speed to 150 knots, one of them said, voice clipped and flat. She complied, easing the throttles back, letting the nose drop just enough to bleed speed without making herself a slow-moving target. The falcons hung there like wolves on either flank, never speaking to each other, their silence almost louder than the comms chatter she was used to on final approach. Her main gear thumped down on the rough tarmac harder than she liked. The Warthog's landing roll was long but steady, her controls stick firm in her grip as she coaxed the old bird toward the far end where a scatter of vehicles waited. They weren't standard Air Force ground unit pickup trucks, a fuel bowser with peeling paint, a battered forklift. The people climbing out of them wore no matching uniforms, just a mix of flight coveralls, desert camo, and civilian work shirts. As she shut down the engines, the turbine whine winding down into the desert heat, the mismatched crew moved in fast, like ants to a dropped crumb. She could feel their eyes on her, could see some of them cutting glances at each other, their expressions a mix of curiosity and something sharper. The F-16s stayed on the taxiway, idling in place, their cockpits dark behind reflective visors. Not a word over the radio now, not even the perfunctory "welcome to base." Dana unstrapped with deliberate calm, every motion smooth and unhurried, sliding her helmet free and placing it on the seat. She stepped down onto the tarmac, the heat bleeding through her boots, her posture straight but loose. A controlled display, not submissive, not defiant, simply present. One of the falcons began to taxi toward her, slow and deliberate. She watched it approach, the canopy reflecting the white blaze of the sun. The pilot inside turned his head toward her Warthog, not at her but at the tail section. Dana followed the motion with her own eyes, the vertical stabilizer gleaming faintly in the heat shimmer. He froze. The second F-16, still holding back, rolled a few feet forward before the pilot inside seemed to notice as well. Then he, too, turned toward her tail number and cut his engines. The first pilot's jet idled for another long moment, canopy still turned toward that marking, before the tone in the air changed. It wasn't relief. It wasn't fear. It was the sudden shift of people who realized the prey they'd been circling wasn't prey at all. It was recognition, sharp, undeniable, and it made the air between them feel charged in an entirely different way. The heat shimmered between them, that wavering mirage of desert air that made everything feel a little unreal. Dana didn't move at first. She stood with the sun at her back, the mismatched ground crew shifting uncomfortably in the silence, the two F-16s idling like guard dogs who suddenly weren't sure if they were supposed to bite. Then, with the kind of unhurried deliberation that comes from knowing exactly how much control you still have, she started walking toward her Warthog. Her boots crunched on the tarmac, each step steady, unflinching. She kept her eyes forward, not on the men watching her, not on the vehicles, but on the tail section of her A-10. The vertical stabilizer stood tall against the blistered sky, the paint faded, but the numbers still sharp. To anyone else, it was just an old tail number. To certain people, it was a ghost. She reached the base of the tail and rested her gloved hand against the metal, feeling the faint warmth from the engine's recent shutdown. She didn't have to look. She knew exactly what they were staring at, 3 numbers and 2 letters that should have been scrubbed from the rolls years ago. It wasn't supposed to exist anymore, neither was she. The memory came unbidden, as it always did when someone spoke that number out louder, when silence spoke it for them. Mountain ridges, black against a pale winter sky. Radio chatter fractured by static and urgency. A downed F-16 somewhere in the kill zone. Enemy anti-air batteries on every peak worth the name. AWACS had written it off as unrecoverable. Command said the cost was too high. She'd taken the mission anyway, alone, because she'd been close enough to get there and stubborn enough to refuse impossible as an answer. The Warthog had roared into that canyon like a beast looking for a fight, chaff and flares bursting in the frozen air, her 30 mil cannon chewing up rock and gun emplacement alike. She'd taken hits, big one-holes punched through the skin, hydraulics bleeding out, master caution lights screaming at her to quit. But she'd kept the nose down, her eyes locked on the IR signature of the survivor huddled near the wreckage. She remembered the F-16's canopy shattered, the pilot's flare of relief when her ugly gray savior dropped into view. They'd limped out together, her A-10 barely flying, engines coughing all the way to friendly lines. The mission was never officially logged. She was told to forget it. She never did. Now, on this dusty strip, the past stood between her and the men in those F-16s. One of them tall, broad-shouldered even in the cockpit, popped his canopy and pulled his helmet free. He had the same jawline, the same eyes as the man she'd dragged out of the mountains years ago. His younger brother, she realized in an instant. The other pilot, still seated in his jet, was quieter about it. He'd been up high that day, she guessed, on overwatch, hearing the chaos but never getting eyes on the A-10 that pulled off the impossible, until now. The aggression in their body language was gone. No tight, forward lean, no aggressive engine note from the turbines. Instead, they sat there in an odd sort of reverence, as if afraid sudden movement might break whatever moment had descended over the airstrip. The younger brother stepped down from the ladder, holding his helmet against his hip. His eyes tracked from the tail number to her face and back again, like he was confirming that both really existed in the same place. The other pilot finally cut his engines, the whine tapering into a hollow, settling quiet. For a long beat, no one spoke. The ground crew, sensing something they didn't understand, kept their distance. Dana met their gazes in turn, measured, calm, letting them see that she wasn't rattled, wasn't angry, wasn't afraid. Finally, the younger brother broke the silence, his voice quieter than she expected. "Ma'am, we didn't know it was you." Dana let one corner of her mouth curve upward, just slightly. Most people don't. The younger brother didn't break eye contact, as he stepped closer, helmet still tucked under his arm. "We had orders," he said, voice steady now, but edged with something that sounded like regret. "Intel came down an hour ago. 10 stolen from a forward depot 2 sectors over. Pilot not responding to hails. Description matched you, location matched you. We were told to force it down if we couldn't confirm." Dana arched a brow. "And you skipped the confirm part?" His wingman finally joined them on the ground, pulling his gloves off slowly, like the movement might buy him time to pick the right words. "We were moving fast, ma'am. Orders were vague and, well, you fit the profile." His gaze flicked to the tail number again. "Until we saw that." Dana let the words settle. She knew how intel chains could twist under pressure, how a rushed identification could turn an ally into a target. She'd seen it happen before, and she'd been on the wrong end of it more than once. Still, the fact that they'd moved with weapons hot left a taste in her mouth she didn't care for. Before she could decide what to say next, a harsh burst of static ripped through all 3 of their radios. A voice came in hard, breathless with urgency. "All aircraft, be advised, drogue strike package inbound toward forward operating base Kestrel. Estimated time on station, 9 minutes. Repeat, 9 minutes. All available assets respond immediately." The 3 of them froze for half a second, glancing instinctively toward the horizon. Dana keyed her mic. "Command, this is Ironhand. Available assets in sector?" The reply was grim. "Negative, Ironhand. Closest CAS flight is 15 minutes out. You're it." The younger brother looked at his wingman, then back at her. "3 aircraft. You in?" Dana didn't answer right away. She glanced back at her Warthog, the battered airframe still warm, still smelling faintly of hot oil and dust. The A-10 wasn't built for speed, but against a low-altitude strike package, it could still turn a battlefield inside out, especially with the right hands on the stick. She looked at both of them. I lead, you follow. We do this my way or not at all. Two quick nods. No hesitation. The shift was instant. Whatever tension had existed before was gone, replaced by the instinctive lockstep of pilots facing the same fight. Dana climbed back into the cockpit, the seat hugging her like an old friend. Her hands moved without thought, battery on, avionics alive, engines spooling with that deep, familiar growl. In her peripheral vision, the F-16s were already powering up, their canopies flashing in the sun. Razor, Falcon 2, she called over the radio, her voice crisp now, command threading through every syllable. We're wheels up in 90 seconds. We form on me. And when I call break, you break hard and you don't question it. Copy that, Iron Hand, Razor replied, and she caught the faintest shift in his tonea, respect earned, not assumed. The Warthog rumbled forward, heavy but purposeful, her shadow sliding long across the tarmac as she pushed toward the runway. The F-16s fell into trail, sleek predators flanking the old warhorse. They climbed into the desert sky together, sun flashing off steel, comms alive with short, tight calls. As they leveled into formation, Razor's voice came over the net, lighter now but still carrying that undercurrent of awe. Iron Hand, after today, we're buying you that drink we owe you. Dana smiled under her visor, the desert stretching wide ahead, the mission pulling them forward. Some legends faded with time. Hers, it seemed, was just getting started.